The death of Adam, was it really a divine punishment or simply the fate of humanity? Join me on this journey where we'll explore every detail of his life, his fall, and his mysterious end. Stay until the end, because what you'll discover will leave you speechless. To understand what happened with Adam's death, first we need to really know who he was. According to the Bible, Adam was the first human being created by God, but his origin was very different from that of people born today. Instead of coming into the world through birth, God himself formed him with his own hands using the dust of the earth. He was a special creation, made with care and purpose. But Adam wasn't alive yet. Then, God did something unique. He breathed his own breath of life into Adam's nostrils, and at that moment, Adam came to life. This means that his life didn't just come from matter, but had a direct connection to God from the very first moment. Adam was created with the ability to think, feel, and choose, and, on top of that, he had a close relationship with his Creator. He wasn't just another living being, but the beginning of humanity and the first representative of the relationship between God and human beings. For Adam, God prepared a perfect home, the Garden of Eden. It wasn't just any place, but a true paradise. In Eden, everything was harmonious, peaceful, and abundant. There was no death, pain, or sickness. The earth produced delicious fruits without any need for work. The climate was perfect and there were no worries. There were rivers with crystal clear water, leafy trees providing cool shade, and animals with which Adam could interact without fear. It was an environment where there was no danger or suffering. God gave Adam the responsibility to care for the garden and to name the animals. Every day he could walk and talk with God directly, without barriers, without fear. Adam did not know what tiredness, sadness, or loneliness were. Everything he needed was within his reach and his life was full and carefree. Even though he had everything necessary to live a fulfilled life, there was still something missing in Adam's life: human companionship. In the Garden of Eden, he was surrounded by a great variety of animals, each with its own beauty and uniqueness. He had the responsibility of naming them and taking care of them, but none of them could be his equal. Adam could see how the animals were paired up, complementing each other. And even though his relationship with God was perfect, God himself saw that it was not good for man to be alone. This shows us that, from the very beginning, human beings were designed for companionship and mutual support, and that loneliness was not part of the original plan. Even though Eden was a paradise, Adam had not yet experienced the special bond of sharing his life with another human being. That is why God took the initiative and decided to give him a suitable companion. But instead of creating another human being from the earth, as he did with Adam, God chose a different and more meaningful method. He caused Adam to fall into a deep sleep and, while he slept, took one of his ribs and from it formed his companion. This method of creation was no coincidence. It meant that the new person would be intimately connected to Adam, not as a separate being, but as part of himself. When he woke up, Adam saw another human being for the first time and recognized in her someone like himself, someone with whom he could share his life. She was the missing complement, a relationship based on unity, companionship, and mutual purpose. His joy at that moment must have been immense, for now he had someone to laugh with, to talk to, and to share the splendor of Eden. However, even though Adam's life seemed perfect, everything would change with a single decision. From the very beginning, his existence had been privileged. Created directly by God, placed in a paradise without pain or death, with the opportunity to walk and talk with his Creator. But that privilege also brought responsibility. A single act of disobedience was enough to alter not only his destiny, but that of all humanity. Adam went from living in harmony to becoming responsible for the entrance of sin and death into the world. His story teaches us that even decisions that seem small can have enormous consequences, and that freedom always comes with responsibility. Adam experienced firsthand what it means to lose perfection, and his story remains a reminder of how our choices can shape our future and that of those who come after us. Although Adam lived in a beautiful garden full of abundance and freedom, he couldn't do absolutely everything he wanted. God gave him a very clear warning. He could eat from any tree in Eden, except for the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. This tree was not just any other plant in the garden. It represented the difference between obedience and disobedience. God had given him free will, the ability to choose, and with it, the responsibility to make wise decisions. As long as he respected this one rule, he would live in peace and fulfillment in Eden. Everything seemed to be in perfect harmony until a factor appeared that would change everything. One day, Adam saw his companion take the forbidden fruit. According to the Bible, it was a cunning serpent who convinced her that God was hiding something from them, telling her that if she ate from that tree, she would gain wisdom and be like God, knowing good and evil. Adam was not deceived by the serpent directly, but he did have to make a decision when Eve offered him the fruit. At that crucial moment, instead of rejecting it, he accepted it and ate it. He didn't hesitate much or ask for explanations. He simply took the fruit, and with that act, he disobeyed God's command. It was at that instant that something changed inside him. Innocence faded away, and for the first time, he felt shame. Suddenly, he realized he was naked and felt a fear he had never experienced before. What had once been normal and pure now made him feel uncomfortable and confused. This was the first sign that his decision had brought about a profound transformation in his nature. This was the moment that changed everything. Adam's decision was not just a mistake, but an act with enormous consequences. Up until that moment, his relationship with God had been perfect, based on trust and closeness. But by disobeying, he broke that connection and lost his right to live in Eden. God told him that from that day on, he would have to face suffering. Life would no longer be as easy as it was before. Now the earth would not yield its fruits without effort. He would have to work hard, plow the land, and harvest with sweat to get his food. What had once been a carefree existence would now become a daily struggle for survival. And most importantly of all, death became his destiny. Until that moment, death did not exist in his reality, but now his body would begin to wear out until it finally returned to the dust from which it was formed. However, did this mean that Adam would die immediately? Or did death have a deeper meaning? His story shows us that death is not just the end of physical life, but also the separation from the presence of God, something far more serious than a mere passage of time. Despite everything, Adam continued his life and had children, but sin had already left its mark on them. His descendants were not born with the purity with which he was created, but with a nature inclined toward error and disobedience. What was once a perfect world was now marked by the struggle between good and evil. His own son, Cain, would end up committing the first murder in history by killing his brother Abel. Adam, who had once known perfection, had to witness how his descendants destroyed each other. Sadness and pain became part of his existence. What had begun as a life in paradise ended up becoming a constant struggle filled with suffering and regret. One of the most devastating events in Adam's life was the tragedy between his own sons. Cain, his firstborn, was consumed by envy and rage and, in a fit of anger, killed his brother Abel. This act not only shattered his family, but also marked the first manifestation of evil in humanity. Adam had to face the consequences of his own decision in Eden, watching his sin manifested itself in his descendants. Guilt tormented him. His mistake had not only affected him, but had spread to his own family and the future of humanity. The Bible mentions that Adam lived 930 years. His long life allowed him to witness the development of humanity, but also its corruption. Although in his early years his body was strong, over time he felt it wear down. With each passing day, he saw how sin spread among his descendants, driving them further and further away from God. The world was becoming more hostile, more violent, and further removed from the perfection with which he had been created. Adam knew that the world he saw was a direct consequence of his decision. His long time on earth was not a privilege, but a constant reminder of his fall. As he grew older, he bore the weight of his mistake and the impact it had had on all of humanity. As the centuries passed, his body began to weaken irreversibly. The strength he once had vanished, his skin wrinkled, and his bones became fragile. The first man in the history of humanity would also be the first to fully experience death. It is said that in his final days, Adam asked to be buried in a sacred place and, before dying, pleaded with God for the redemption of his descendants. Perhaps in his last moments, he reflected on the life he had lost and on what could have been if he had obeyed. His final breath marked the end of an era and left a mark on the history of humanity. Adam was not only the first man, but also the first to fall. However, his story does not end there. In Christian theology, Jesus is referred to as the second Adam, the one who came to restore what the first had destroyed. Although Adam's fall brought death, redemption through Christ brought life. His mistake was part of a divine plan that, centuries later, would allow for the salvation of humanity. Adam represents the beginning of sin in the world, but also the first link in the story of redemption. So, did Adam die as an immediate punishment or as a gradual process? If we consider physical death as a natural consequence of sin, then yes, his death was the result of his disobedience. But if we look at it from a deeper perspective, his death symbolizes the fall of humanity and the need for divine restoration. Adam not only lost his own life, but he also dragged all his descendants into a constant struggle between good and evil. His story remains a warning of how a single decision can change everything, and how our choices can affect entire generations. And so we conclude this fascinating story about the life and death of Adam, a tale that leaves us reflecting on the impact of our decisions and the eternal struggle between good and evil. What do you think about Adam's fall? Do you believe his fate was sealed from the beginning, or could he have changed his story? Leave us a comment with your point of view. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos, leave a like if you enjoyed this content, and share it with others so we can keep exploring the mysteries of humanity together. See you in the next video, and may God bless you greatly. A big hug, and until next time.